Welcome back to Modern Star Wars Action Figures, the series. With me, your host, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich. I'm a big Star Wars collector, and I've worked in the toy industry, so I like to bring a unique perspective. And with Star Wars figures, we've had single figures at this point. We've had figures with vehicles, both sort of small one-man and some starships. And we've had deluxe figures, both sort of off-screen, that slightly off-camera figure, as well as deluxe figures that were on-screen. All of this was done to create a deluxe price point, similar to the light-up figures, because the reason that you do more deluxe figures is because you want to have greater reach. You want to increase your presence in the aisle and essentially have more toys to sell. So creating a multi-pack was the next step. Now, Hasbro had done multi-packs in Power of the Force 2 before. They had done this recreation of vintage figure 4-pack right out the gate. Chewbacca, Han, Darth Vader, and Luke, all from A New Hope, as, well, what would today be looked at as the Retro series. And this predated that by 30 years. And it's interesting how now the Retro series is one of the hottest things, but when this was put out, it was kind of met with, it did well. It came with some widescreen Topps trading cards, which were very cool, I have to say, and helped introduce the concept of widescreen to a VHS television world. But compared to the Retro series single-carded figures, this multi-pack was, it was looked at as just kind of a one and done. But it's significant because it was the first exclusive, it was for Toys R Us, and it was the first multi-pack. And that's what we need to talk about today, both Toys R Us exclusives and multi-packs, because Star Wars would have a long, long history of doing store exclusives for all the major retailers. And outside of the vintage recreation pack, that 4-pack that came out very early, there weren't any other exclusives for Power of the Force 2 this early on. Obviously, this would be a major part of Star Wars for decades, and Toys R Us would get the lion's share of exclusives, mainly because they had more aisle space. The more space you have, the more SKUs you can carry. So Toys R Us, when it existed, and yes, R.I.P. Toys R Us, sniff, definitely over the years had some of the coolest exclusive figures, exclusive sets, exclusive concepts for Star Wars and for many brands. And it was all about aisle space. They just had so much more space. So talking about Toys R Us, Star Wars, and multi-packs, while obviously there's been many, it all starts with this one, Death Star Escape, the very first Power of the Force 2 and very first store exclusive. Well, first multi-pack and first store exclusive. Obviously not counting that one-off, vintage recreation. So this was Death Star Escape, not to be confused with the later Death Star Escape single Han Solo figure from the Power of the Jedi line, and not to be confused with the Galactic Heroes Star Wars Death Star Escape, or the board game Escape from the Death Star, or the trading card Escape from the Death Star. Everyone's always leaving this Death Star. It's like they don't want to hang out. I don't know why. So this was the first cinema scene, and it was actually pretty groundbreaking, because not only as the very first exclusive, the cinema scenes were going to go on to bring some of the coolest, sort of single one-off figures in the line. The first one was a remake of 3 figures we'd already had, but posed slightly differently and uniquely, but at least giving us a chance to get figures that we may not otherwise have been able to pick up. Later cinema scenes were going to have original characters, but for this first one, it was going to set the standard of 3 figures, accessories, and a base, which was actually pretty cool, because with the pegs, it was a great way to display figures, and you could cut out the back panel to display it as well for a photo. So we had Luke Stormtrooper, we had a regular Stormtrooper, and we'd had Chewbacca as single-carded figures. Han Solo as a Stormtrooper at this point was only available through a Fruit Loops mail-away campaign, where if you ate a lot of sugary cereal and mailed away 2 proofs of purchase, you would get your cool Han Solo. And this was actually the first figure revealed for the line, because this came out before Wave 1, At least the offer, the cereal box did. The figure didn't ship till much later. But it became kind of our introduction to Power of the Force 2, was seeing this figure on the back of Fruit Loops, because that was, kind of before the internet, before the dark times. And he showed up in a nice, poly bag with his white shipper box, which was reminiscent of the vintage line. He was originally supposed to have a blaster with 2 handles on it, but the cereal maker didn't like the idea of a action figure coming with a weapon. So the blaster that was actually designed for this Han Solo, because of the way his hands were posed, wound up getting pulled. And you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like a blaster with more than one handle. It's, like 2 handles. I don't know, something like...
Guitars that are like double guitars,
So that blaster that was intended for Han eventually did come with the all-new likeness Princess Leia figure, which we'll get to in time as soon as we get to her wave. This was actually the first wave that was able to react to sales from the initial release. So that 2-pronged blaster there, that was for Han. Although looking at reference from the movie, I don't know, was there ever a 2-handled blaster? I mean, I know the vintage gun kind of had this, but it wasn't quite accurate to the movie either, also with the ammo clip sticking out the side. I don't know. Either way, 2 handles, as Otto says, 2 is, cooler than 1, and we at least got that blaster for our original Han Solo in Stormtrooper gear. But because this figure was a mail away and time had passed, for fans who still wanted a Han in Stormtrooper gear, this new cinema scene was a chance to get it. And Luke did have a single card release, but, they just re-released him, but this time with more widespread arms. Chewbacca, on the other hand, got closer arms. See, it's all about moving the arms in a different position. But this made the figure, just different enough and justified why you might want to buy this pack again. It was also the very first time we got binder clips in Star Wars, what is known as handcuffs, I guess, in the real world. And this would be a long tradition of S&M handcuff play in the Star Wars universe, with so many figures coming with handcuffs. Handcuffs were just... I don't think there's ever been an action figure line with so many figures coming with different variations of handcuffs as the Star Wars 3 3/4 line. We've gotten so many variations over the years. And it's interesting how some of them are very movie accurate, but the first ones we got, which kind of look more like medieval chains, I don't think this is what they looked like. I don't know. I look at the reference material, and it doesn't look like this at all. But hey, this line was aimed at kids. So as far as the 3 figures we got, the Luke Stormtrooper, Han Stormtrooper, and Chewbacca, in the original line in the 80s, we did get a Stormtrooper Luke very, very late in the game in 1984, 1985 from the original Power of the Force with the coins. We did not, however, get a Han Solo. This is a fan custom, and a rather well done one, I must admit, with a blister and everything. Whoever did this is extremely talented, a lot more than I am. So even though having a Stormtrooper Han in the vintage line kind of would have made sense and would have paired very well with that Luke, we were denied it. So getting a Han Stormtrooper was kind of very important to modern collectors. We wouldn't get a single-carded version for many, many years. I think the very first one was in the Legacy collection here, where it was actually just a Han head on an existing Stormtrooper body, but hey, it got the job done, and that's kind of the whole point. So many Han and Stormtroopers have just been Han's head put on a Stormtrooper body, and why not? Eventually, we would sort of get an ultimate version of this in the vintage collection with a much better face sculpt and improved articulation. And because, again, this figure never shipped in the original line, it was always on the want list. And this pack really did open up a whole new world, because cinema scenes took the brand to a different level.
That's good. You've taken your first step into a larger world.
We now had multi-packs. We had another shot to get that Han Solo Stormtrooper that had eluded us in the vintage line, and if you missed out on Fruit Loops. And not only was this the very first multi-pack of Power of the Force 2 figures, it was also the first exclusive, which really opened up a floodgate of exclusives to come. So a very landmark figure in a landmark toy line.